communists deal with AI and the new technology to come? The capitalists already know what to do with them. Well, I'm glad you asked the question, unknown, because the question of AI fits in exactly with everything that Karl Marx taught. And I'm glad you asked the question. That's okay, because you're new to this, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being new. I was taught in school that communism means everyone gets paid the same wage no matter how hard they work, right? And that it wouldn't work because people are lazy, blah, 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 blah. I've had people also say, well, socialism is when the government runs everything to make it fair, etc. That is not what Marxism teaches. Marxism teaches that human beings are a special animal because unlike all the other species that exist on this planet, human beings don't merely interact with their environment. Human beings force the environment to serve them. They master the environment. And human beings, the majority of human history, for tens of thousands of years, were hunter-gatherers. But at some point, human beings acquired intelligence. And they started developing spears and rocks, and they started paying attention to the patterns and how plants grow. And with their intelligence, with our higher intellect, we got too good at hunting and gathering. And the first social revolution took place with the dawn of agriculture. We started growing our own food. We started domesticating animals. And since that time, human beings have been constantly reinventing our relationship with our environment and more effectively forcing the environment to serve us. And we had hunter-gatherer civilization. We had slavery and feudalism. We have capitalism. And capitalism was a great advance over feudalism because it was a new technological plane. We started producing goods in factories to be sold. Technology was advancing, and the feudal mode of production that's about largely subsistence farming was rendered irrelevant. The problem with capitalism is that it has unleashed human creativity to levels that go beyond the constraints of the market. Let me give you an example. Self-driving cars would be a great thing in a rational society because this job called driving would no longer be necessary. However, in capitalism, self-driving cars would lead to riots in the streets, mass unemployment, and hunger. In systems of the past, people were homeless because there wasn't enough housing. Homelessness accompanied a shortage of housing. Only under capitalism do people become homeless because there is too much housing. Only under capitalism do people go hungry because there is too much food. In all the systems of the past, hunger was caused by a lack of food, but only under capitalism is hunger caused by too much food existing. I've told many times the coal miner's riddle. Little boy says to his father, "Father, why is it so cold?" The father says, "Because I can't afford to buy any coal to heat the stove, keep our house warm." The little boy says to the father, "Why can you not afford to buy any coal?" The father says, "Because I lost my job at the coal mine. I was laid off." The little boy says to the father, "Why were you laid off from your job at the coal mine?" The father says, "Because there is too much coal." That's capitalism. Capitalism is production organized for profit, for the profit of private owners. And the more efficient production gets under capitalism, the poorer everyone gets. Capitalism is constantly reducing the role of the worker at the assembly line. And in a rational society, that would be a good thing. Capitalism is not rational. In a system where your only value is your ability to rent yourself out to a boss so that he can turn your labor into profit, it leads to greater and greater poverty. And the worker is also the consumer. The wages paid out to the worker in production are never enough to buy back what he produces. And capitalism has this built-in problem called glut, G-L-U-T, glut, overproduction. And every few years, the economy breaks down because there's too much stuff, because too much wealth has been created. And you have people homeless on the street because there's too many houses. You have people hungry because there's too much food being produced. There's a cave in Missouri where the government has buried billions of dollars worth of cheese. Why? To keep the price of dairy high. As to inflate the price of dairy, they've purchased billions and billions of dollars worth of cheese and buried it. Right? The government of the United States buys all kinds of milk and dumps it out. There are many examples of this. The military-industrial complex, so many things are done to deal with this built-in problem of the fact that in the capitalist system, the worker can never buy back what he produces, and the capitalist is always trying to produce as much stuff as he possibly can, but pay as little as he possibly can in wages. And the worker is also the consumer. The worker cannot buy back what he produces, and the economy continues to shut down. And all the great economic crises in the history of capitalism have come after a great technological leap. The Great Depression was spawned by Henry Ford and his great inventions, assembly line production. World War I came after many great technological advancements in terms of steam engines and radios and all kinds of things. And we are now living in a prolonged economic crisis caused by the computer revolution. The computer revolution has taken this built-in problem of capitalism, the competition of the worker with the machine, the replacement of human labor, the inability of the worker to buy back what he produces, the reduction of the role of the worker at the assembly line, the reduction of the purchasing power of the worker as he has no place in the system. It has taken that problem to a new level, a level that has never before been seen. Computers can play chess better than human beings. They can trade stocks better than human beings. Any manual task, a machine can now do better than a person. And that urgently requires a system where the means of production, the banks and the factories and the industries, are rationally organized to serve human beings, not the narrow interests of private owners. Artificial intelligence has created a situation that brings to life Karl Marx's thesis about the tendency of the rate of profits to fall and the problem of overproduction on a scale humanity has never before seen. Everything that Karl Marx wrote was writing about this issue, the issue with artificial intelligence that we're describing here. Everything that Karl Marx wrote about was about this, that the role of the worker in production would get less and less and less. This would lead to greater and greater poverty amid abundance. And it would only be a matter of time before the working class, the broad masses of the people, rose up and seized control of the machines, took them away from private individual capitalists, and seized control of them and operated them in a rational way in the interests of all society. And that technological advancement would make this a necessity. It would become an urgent necessity that the machines and the centers of economic power, the means of production, be forced to function in a centralized and rational way and produce wealth for the good of all society. And then, once this problem of poverty amid plenty, poverty created by abundance, homelessness caused by too much housing, hunger caused by too much food, once that's eliminated, once the means of production and technology is not being used to make profits for private owners, but it's centralized, then there will be no limit to human growth and no limit to human creativity. And at that point, we will soar forward, no longer restrained by the narrow horizon of bourgeois right, and we will soar toward that ultimate goal of communism. We will create a world with so much wealth and so much abundance that nobody has to work, that labor becomes life's prime want, no longer a necessity. We will create a society in which there is no difference between mental and manual labor because technology has made those two categories irrelevant. We will create a society where people can do what they feel like doing and take what they want, from each according to his own ability and to each according to his needs. And artificial intelligence makes that a necessity. Artificial intelligence, the way it was explained to me by Jack Ma when I met him in Sochi, Russia, at the Valdi Discussion Club in 2017. When I met Jack Ma, he spoke to all the people in the room. There was only about 100 people in the room. And Jack Ma said, "We used to make people like machines, but now we make machines like people." It used to be that our entire educational system was about taking people that are creative creatures, that have big imaginations, and forcing them to be robots, forcing them to be able to be programmed like computers, forcing their mind to fit inside of little boxes so that they could be useful, disciplined workers to produce products for capitalists. But now, everything that we used to force human beings to be like machines in order to do can be done by a machine. So the only thing that human beings are going to have going forward is our humanness. A machine, Jack Ma said, can never have a soul. Machines can't love. Machines can't have a connection with God. And that we have to change everything about society because the way we have operated is all wrong up until this point, because a machine will be able to do anything, any mechanical task can be done by a machine, and all human beings have is their creative power. And so education is going to have to change. Everything is going to have to change. But the fundamental issue is not that artificial intelligence exists. The fundamental issue is that under capitalism, artificial intelligence leads to mass hunger in the streets. But when artificial intelligence and the means of production is harnessed and operated in a rational way for the good of all society, the sky's the limit. And artificial intelligence is forcing us to that point, the point of no return, the breaking point of capitalism. Capitalism cannot handle self-driving cars. Capitalism cannot handle artificial intelligence. It's reaching that breaking point where the crisis of overproduction used to be, they happened every couple years. There was a crisis of overproduction. And then we had the Great Depression of the 1930s that didn't end. It just kept going until World War II, until half the planet was destroyed. And now with the computer revolution, we have entered a long-term permanent economic crisis spawned by advances in technology. And we have reached the breaking point. And the only way that capitalism, the only way that human civilization can move forward is to abolish the system where production is organized for profit and organize a society where the centers of economic power, the instruments of production, are centralized under the control of popular power. That's the only way out of this. And artificial intelligence shows that once we take control of those machines, the sky's the limit. The sky is the limit. So, you know, the sky is the limit. And that's that. So I hope this answers your question, because you're asking about artificial intelligence, and I am explaining to you that that is everything that Karl Marx wrote. And if you want to understand the Marxist view on this issue, you need to go read The Future is Up to Us by Nelson Peary. You need to go read High Tech, Low Pay by Sam Marcy. And you need to go read Low Wage Capitalism by Fred Goldstein. All right. And I will go get all three of those books so you can see them. And this is what I've been explaining on these live streams, night after night, year after year, month after month. I've been explaining this because this is Marxism. What I'm explaining to you right now, this is called Marxism. The tendency of the rate of profit to fall, the problem of overproduction. This is Marxism, right? This is Marxism. Nelson Peary explains it in this book, The Future is Up to Us, a revolutionary talking politics with the American people. Fred Goldstein explains it in this book, Colossus with a Feet of Clay, Low Wage Capitalism, what the new globalized high-tech imperialism means for the class struggle in the U.S. And Sam Marcy explains it in this book, High Tech, Low Pay, a Marxist analysis of the changing character of the working class. And of course, I wrote about it, and I quote all three of those books and many other books in my book, Where is America Going? Marxism, MAGA, and the Coming Revolution. And this understanding of the technology and the computer revolution necessitating a rationally organized economy, and this being the breaking point, the Gotterdammerung that Marx spoke about so long ago, this being the ultimate turning point, this is an understanding that should be common sense. And it is common sense in other parts of the world, but it is completely missing from the discourse. People in America who talk about Marxism, they talk about worker cooperatives. They talk about, oh, somebody owns the factory. Someone works in the factory. That's not fair. They say, I don't like billionaires. No one should have $1 billion. They say, oh, the rich people should pay their fair share. None of them talk about this. They don't talk about the built-in problems of the productive forces being organized in order to maximize profits for a small group of owners, and how human creativity and intelligence has exceeded the narrow constraints of the profit system. That humanity has made machines that are so brilliant and so effective, they cannot be restrained. The productive forces cannot fit into the narrow confines of the market. That I just explained to you, that's Marxism. And we're talking about Marxism here at CPI, and that explains why China is growing and the West is dying. And if you can't grasp this, this isn't Marxism. This is in the Communist Manifesto. This is in Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific by Frederick Engels. All right, go read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific by Frederick Engels. Go read the Communist Manifesto. This is what it's all about. This is what it's all about. It's about Adam and Eve. All right. Now you're laughing. You're like, Caleb, it's about Adam and Eve. It's about that Christian fairy tale story that we all learned when we were children. How the hell is it about Adam and Eve? It's about Adam and Eve because the story goes that Adam and Eve were in a garden. They had everything they needed. Everything they needed. They didn't have to work. They just took what they needed. It was all there for them. They were told that there was a tree, and that tree was a tree of knowledge. A tree of knowledge of good and evil. They had no knowledge of good and evil before that tree. They were just living in the garden doing whatever they wanted. But they were told that if they ate of this tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they would surely die. But they ate of this tree, and they acquired knowledge. They acquired knowledge of good and evil. And suddenly they weren't in a garden anymore. Instead, they had to grow their own food. And suddenly they had technology, and suddenly they could invent things. And suddenly human beings went from being just, creatures in a garden, just happy, doing whatever they wanted, just being part of the environment. Suddenly they got into a situation where they acquired knowledge of good and evil, and they could interact with their environment. They had knowledge, they had human creativity, but they weren't mature enough. They weren't mature enough to handle this knowledge. And so human beings have been in this odd between space. We've been in this odd between space for thousands of years, where we have the godlike ability to create, the godlike ability to invent things, to force nature to serve us. But we also have animalistic, primitive instincts and desires. And we are constantly pushing and pulling between the godlike qualities and the animalistic qualities of ourselves. And there's a constant battle between animalism and humanism taking place within us. And communism, that ultimate stage of communism, is the triumph of the godism within all of us. Communism, the higher stage of communism, would be human beings getting their shit together to the point that they have created and unleashed their intelligence to the point that they are no longer restrained by animalistic tendencies, animalistic aggression, animalistic ways of being. Right? This is what's going on. Right? And that every time we reach a higher plane of technology, we are becoming more rational, we're becoming more godlike, but we still pull ourselves down. Right? And that communism is the restoration of the Garden of Eden. It gets us back to that where we have everything we need. We just do what we feel like doing. We have everything we need. No inequality, no poverty, no state, no coercion. That's what communism is. And again, what I just explained to you, this is Marxism. Go and read The Origin of the Family, Private Property, and the State by Frederick Engels. Go and read Socialism, Utopian and Scientific